50 beautiful Hoya varieties. Hoyas are a wonderfully strange, beautiful, and numerous plant genus that's gaining many fans. Besides their amazing flowers, foliage, and fragrance, and despite their reputation for being difficult, many Hoya varieties make excellent beginner plants. No matter how experienced you are as a gardener, you're certain to be surprised and intrigued by some of these beautiful Hoya varieties. Hoya acuta. The Hoya acuta is a low-key climbing vine with rather pedestrian leaves that happens to be one of the easiest and best flowering Hoyas. Each spectacular cluster contains about 50 pink and white small flowers. The lance-shaped foliage grows from short petioles that attach to the main stem. The Hoya acuta can tolerate moderate humidity and likes a comfortable indoor temperature range. Hoya Fina. Hoya Fina is a wonderful flowering variety with classic foliage that makes a fantastic hanging plant. This vibrant Hoya features pale green, paddle-shaped leaves on winding stems. Tiny hairs on the leaves give it a fuzzy appearance. The maroon, mildly musk-scented flower clusters are almost 2 inches across. Hoya Australis. Hoya Australis is a great all-around flowering vine that's been in cultivation for a long time and has many hybrids. Hoya has long climbing stems and broad glossy leaves. The flowers are white with red accents and produce a strong, pleasantly spicy fragrance. Hoya Bella. This elegant foliage plant has pointed elliptical leaves deeply indented along the center vein. Its blooms are another highlight. The star-shaped clusters of adorable fat, white flowers have a delicate red to pink coloration. Hoya breviolata. This cute, compact epiphyte may have the smallest leaves of any Hoya. It emits a peperomia-like aura as a desk or windowsill plant. The foliage is light green and slightly cupped. It blooms in clusters of cream flowers with red centers that smell like sweet caramel. Hoya Bertonii. In high light, a dark border may be present. The plant blooms easily and produces quantities of raspberry-colored flowers in groups of 15 to 20 per cluster. There is more than usual confusion around the Hoya Bertonii's identity. It has a near twin called the Hoya species Affinity Bertonii. Hoya Clistophila. This splendid climbing variety features artistic dark markings against the lime-green background of its stiff, tough leaves. The pattern subdivides each leaf's surface visually into rectangles, giving the foliage a boldly textured, exotic appearance. Hoya Clistophila's blooms are beautiful clusters of red-hued peduncles bearing white flowers. Their fragrance is sweetly perfumed. Hoya Carnosa. Hoya Carnosa is less common than many of its excellent hybrids. The foliage can be plain, variegated, crinkled, or otherwise textured. The blooms are long-lasting, fuzzy clusters of fragrant stars. Hoya Carnosa are hardy, versatile, and easy to live with. They adapt to moderate humidity and light better than most Hoyas. Hoya caudata. The mesmerizing green, semi-succulent foliage of this maverick species is variegated with light-colored splotches over long, oval leaves. Silvery blotches and flecks mark the leaves randomly in vibrant patterns. The attractive blooms are clusters of white fuzzy stars with red centers. Hoya Coronaria. Hoya Coronaria is an areostema, so it's not one of the easier Hoyas. It has a squat, low profile with thick central stems that can grow to 5 feet in length. The leaves are succulent and need less water than some Hoyas, but the plant likes high humidity. The blossoms are sizable at over an inch wide and have reddish-pink speckling and tinting that is affected by their lighting. Hoya Kumenjiana. Hoya Kumenjiana is a great plant for beginners. It grows briskly and adapts to average humidity and a range of light conditions. This lovable Hoya is a potential starlet waiting for the spotlight. Its sturdy, pristine vines and dark green, oval leaves are mildly succulent. Hoya Curtosi. Hoya Courtesy works as a hanging plant or a trailing ground cover. It's a nice desktop Hoya that won't outgrow your room. It's usually not difficult to find this popular plant at a reasonable cost, but prices can vary dramatically. It's a miniature creeping succulent with small and round, olive-hued foliage mottled with silver and purple flecks. It blooms with cute, fragrant lime green flowers. Hoya Diversifolia. This trailing Hoya has simple green, oval leaves with deep indentations along the central vein. It produces the classic Hoya flower, a large drooping cluster of star-shaped, fuzzy, wax-like pink and white or yellow blooms. The flowers are fragrant and often produce nectar. Hoya Diversifolia is an excellent flowering variety that begins blooming early in life and produces steadily through the warm season. Hoya elliptica. The Hoya elliptica's pale markings visually divide each Kelly green leaf into quadrants. Each leaf resembles a turtle shell, hence the common name, turtle shell Hoya. The plant blooms in stunning clusters of small, showy flowers. The fat outer petals are a fuzzy backdrop to the discreet inner blooms which look like star-shaped gummy bears. The centers are red or pink. Hoya Finlaysony. Hoya Finlaysony is a designer hybrid with an exotic, upbeat vein pattern. The long, oval foliage is fuzzy and soft. The plant produces globular clusters of white flowers with red center blossoms that look like gummy bear candy, but the scene-stealing foliage is the main attraction. Hoya Fitchy. This gorgeous vining plant features a pale, finely webbed vein pattern over emerald leaves, but that's not all. The Hoya Fitchy also produces copper-colored blooms with vibrant coral pink centers. The colors are influenced by growing conditions and can vary from yellow to orange to pink. Hoya Globulosa. The mesmerizing surface of Hoya Globulosa's pointy, paddle-shaped leaves displays green-on-green veining and handsome indentation patterns. Though it can be a temperamental bloomer, the plant can produce radiant globes of bright, fat white flowers with red centers. Hoya Imbricata. Hoya Imbricata requires high humidity, warmth, and diffuse bright light. They do well in dappled shade outdoors. It's hard to give them enough light indoors without putting them in direct sun. Some growers add artificial lighting. The leaves can grow up to 10 inches wide on some varieties and are a lovely mottled green. Hoya Imperialis. The Hoya Imperialis is a terrestrial plant that wants a more typical soil than the airy mixes used for epiphytes. It likes a lot of light and is well pulled a few feet back from an intense southern or western exposure. The variety blooms prolifically in good conditions and is one of the easier Hoyas to flower. Hoya Kentiana. Hoya Kentiana is kept for its foliage as much as for its blooms. This buoyant plant fills a pot with a bustling crop of long, lance-shaped leaves. Its sculptural foliage has a waxy surface and attractive dark edges. The clusters of cute, fat little flowers last about a week and smell sweetly of butterscotch. Hoya Carey. This plant, otherwise known as a sweetheart Hoya or lucky heart, is commonly sold as a single, heart-shaped leaf planted in a small pot. The bright emerald green color of the cute, rounded leaves makes them popular street Valentine's Day gifts. Hoya Croniana. This elegant variety has small, heart-shaped leaves that grow in pairs or small clusters on the long stem vine. It's a close cousin to the Hoya Lacunosa and recently reclassed to its own species. The plant flowers profusely in season with clusters of fragrant, white blooms. The intoxicating scent is heaviest at night. Hoya Lacunosa. The plant's tiny, fuzzy blooms have a cinnamon-scented fragrance that fills their space. Sets of leaves grow along pliable stems. The small, canoe-shaped foliage is waxy and outlined with refined dark edges. This fragrant variety is a great introduction to highly scented Hoyas. It's common and is often available for a reasonable cost in garden centers. Hoya Latifolia. This impressive variety is known as the dinner plate Hoya for its huge, round leaves. It grows on sturdy, fat, climbing stems. Though grown for its large, round leaves, the Hoya Latifolia has lovely globular blooms with clusters containing dozens of small flowers. Hoya Lotterbachi. This Areostema, also called the giant wax plant, grows vines long enough to climb trees in its native forest. The deep green foliage is oval with a pointed tip. Its spectacular, extra-wide blooms are pink to crimson. Hoya Linearis. This eye-catching radical is a departure from the oval leaf, vining Hoya of popular imagination. Hoya Linearis has long, thin, fuzzy leaves that look like decorative green beans. Blooms come in clusters of white, lemon-scented flowers with yellow or pink-hued centers. Hoya Neocaldonica. A sweet vining Hoya that blooms well and is perfectly sized for container living. The rounded foliage is a cheerful lemon-green shade. The plant produces yellow flowers with pink to cherry-red centers. Hoya McGillivray. The plant's scale and elegance make it one of the finest Hoya varieties. It is a giant vining plant that produces a profusion of glossy, dark green foliage. The classic paddle-shaped leaves are large and robust. New leaves emerge with a reddish bronze color and darken as they mature. Hoya macrophylla. This large, rambling species is prized most especially for its waxy, light green, vein-patterned foliage. Their pointed oval leaves have an interesting 3D texture. The flowers are small and dainty, but their color is subdued. The blooms are outshone by the eye-catching leaves, which can grow to 5 inches long. Hoya Megalaster. Hoya Megalaster isn't difficult if it has adequate heat and humidity. They like stronger indirect light than most Hoya varieties and are generally modest growers. It blooms prolifically in the right conditions, producing large, short-lived, pink or red flowers with a vanilla fragrance. Healthy plants can bloom almost continuously. Hoya Memoria. New foliage emerges with red hues. They bloom in pink flowers with red and yellow centers that exude the sweet scent of caramel. This is an easy-going variety that a conscientious novice can succeed with. It's prolific under normal Hoya care. Hoya Meredithy. The spectacular veining of this vining Hoya reverses the look of many tropicals by featuring dark green veins on a light green background. The broad, plump, oval leaves have wavy edges and are covered in a handsome web pattern. The plant produces delicate, lemon-scented flowers. Hoya Meredithy. This stunning epiphyte is a beautiful foliage plant with some extras. The oval, pointed, paddle-shaped leaves are a bright, rich avocado color and have a lustrous sheen. Its veins are delicately delineated across the top surface. The foliage becomes red-tinted in strong light, giving the plant a rosy blush. The Hoya Meredithy blooms with classic sprays of sweetly scented white or yellow blooms. Hoya Mindoransis. This champion blooming variety produces ball-shaped clusters of red-hued and white flowers. The plant is straightforward but attractive, with lance-shaped green foliage on vining stems. This is an epiphyte, so make sure the soil is chunky and fast-draining. Hoya Mindoransis isn't difficult if you supply good humidity and light. Hoya Multiflora. This distinctive Hoya with a woodland vibe has strong stems, thin leaves, and upright growth. The elongated foliage is deep green. The plant blooms in profuse clusters of narrow, swept-back white petals that gradate to yellow at the ends, the reason it is called the shooting star Hoya. Hoya Oboebata. Hoya Oboebata's lovely star-shaped blooms are white to pale purple with pink or red centers. The plant turns lighter in higher light. Some varieties have pink or silver variegation flecks scattered over the dark green leaves. Hoya Odorata. The Hoya Odorata is a strangely indeterminate plant, part bush, part vine. Not really a climber, not quite a pendant-leafed hanger. The foliage is small and pointed and hugs the stem. New leaves emerge with a pinkish hue. As the name suggests, scent is the big feature of this Philippine Hoya. The plant produces small clusters of white, star-shaped, waxy blooms with an intense, sweet fragrance. Hoya Paciflora. This striking Hoya is an extreme of the succulent type, with fat foliage and thick stems. Its rounded, slightly cupped leaves have prominent veins and are attached to the main trunk by a thick petiole. The leaves grow bigger as the plant grows. The plant blooms profusely with fragrant white flowers. Hoya Paciflora. Hoya Paciflora produces single, fragrant, 1-inch wide white flowers with crimson centers. The fuzzy single flowers are unusual and rewarding, but flowering can be difficult without cool temperatures and a nightly fluctuation. Indeed, the name Paciflora implies few blooms. This is a standout foliage variety, however. It's easy indoors and grows vigorously. Hoya Pollinarum. This perky, exclusive Himalayan variety has pairs of narrow, thin leaves with quietly understated dark vein patterns. Paired on vining stems, the leaves together look like a fish's tail. Hoya Pubescens. One of Hoya's charms is that inexpensive, common varieties can be as gorgeous and interesting as rare, expensive ones. Such is the case with Hoya Pubescens, an easy-to-grow Hoya that blooms in clusters of up to 30 small, fuzzy flowers. Its crisp, ovoid leaves splay out from vines that grow up to 8 feet long. The fragrant flowers last up to 14 days. Hoya Ritusa. The stranger side of the Hoya spectrum. It features slim, flat, stick-like green foliage splaying out from the soil. The end of each leaf looks as if it were chopped off. The Hoya Ritusa produces a scattered crop of chubby, white flowers with maroon pop-out centers, but it can be a challenge to bloom. Hoya serpens. Hoya serpens likes being outdoors but comes from the Himalayan region and needs cooler temperatures. This isn't a plant most of us can keep outside all summer. It isn't too difficult to maintain the plant with typical Hoya care, but you may want to get some easier specimens under your belt first. Hoya Shepherdi. Hoya Shepherdi's slender foliage adds diversity to a Hoya collection and looks stunning in a hanging basket. The blooms are a bonus. Flowers are white with a red core and have a pristine, star-like bloom in the center. Hoya Cigalettis. A designer's Hoya, this classic variety features sword-shaped foliage that grows in clumps along small, rambling vines. It's striking as a hanging plant and has a unique dusty rose color palette. The mid-sized, 3-inch long foliage is highly individualistic, but the basic pattern is flat or gray-green leaves with silver mottling. The blooms are a tasteful beige or brown. The flowers look like cookie batter formed and ready for baking. They have a slight caramel fragrance. Hoya Skinneriana. It was thought this plant was a Carnosa hybrid, but after testing it was officially reclassed to Hoya Skinneriana. It has robust, vibrant green, oval leaves on rambling vines, but the reason for the plant's runaway popularity is its blooms. The plant produces flowers in shades of pink and white that are almost an inch wide, packed in clusters of 20 or more. Hoya Spartioides. This unforgettable variety is an even higher-end collection of stalks than the trendy Ritusa. Hoya Spartioides has either dispensed with its peduncles or merged with them. The plant is essentially leafless and is composed instead of long, whip-like, green peduncles that flower from their ends. The smallish, colorful, hanging blooms last only a day. Hoya subcalva. New foliage emerges pale and darkens to a deep green. Each leaf grows to about 5 inches long. The long-lasting flowers are notable, too. They bloom in clusters of about 20 raspberry pink blossoms that smell like grape juice. The petal margins are light apricot, and a wide pink band of color runs along the center vein. Hoya Undulata. This Hoya could probably pass as a weed. Its broad and wavy-edged leaves look tattered and worn even when perfectly sound, as if fashionably distressed to appear aged and rugged. The leaves turn vibrant red under excess light. Flowers with classic Hoya clusters. The exquisite, shiny blooms are white with a rosy blush and crimson speckling. Hoya Varieties. A popular variety with draping stems of cascading, canoe-shaped foliage. Its leaves are similar to the Kentiana, but Hoya Varieties' foliage is shorter and more rounded. It blooms in clusters of attractive plump flowers. If you enjoy watching this video, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching.